Hello and welcome. We just got finished reading a very interesting story, The White Buffalo Woman. And it's going to be hard to talk about it because it's, like 4 pages, but it's incredibly dense with information. It's got stuff about like the origin of the universe, the importance of different things. It's just this woman, this prophetess comes over, and she's obviously holy. And I like how whenever she appears, two young men see her, and one of them gives her due respect because he's like, this is a holy thing. And the other has the desire to satisfy himself with her. And so he gets killed. And I think it's kind of interesting that and he gets killed with lightning, it says, and or eaten in totality by snakes. And I think it's very interesting that basically across every culture, you have this sense that if a regular person wants to have their way with a holy being, that this is a line being crossed that requires immediate action to remove from existence. So it's an interesting thing to see this repeated throughout. You have multiple different events like this in different stories. But what ends up happening is she just kind of goes over and tells them, like, hey, look, prepare the way for me, build a hut, build the stone temple thing, and then I'm going to give you gifts. And she gives them the first pipe, which is the pipe that she uses to teach them everything. She teaches them the dances, she teaches them the songs, and she basically just like goes through and teaches them all, like, this is the structure of society. This is how you're supposed to live. This is what you do to maintain a sacred way, a sacred life. And, to do what's right in the eyes. And she says, like, by doing these things, you commune with what is holy, and you commune with grandfather mystery, who, again, it's like that's the God, the man, the one that created everything, right? Grandfather mystery. I like how he's just called mystery. It's like they know he exists, but they don't know who he is per se, but he's there, and they want to be in relationship with him in some way, shape, or form. And she, I like how she clarifies that everybody in society is of equal and or more value than they would at first perceive. So, like, the men obviously have the value of being the protector, the ones who go out and hunt and do all of these things, which is implied not because she straight up says this is what they are, but by bringing attention to the women and children. So with the women, she's like, within you is the hearth, right? So within you is the hearth. Within you is the ability to create life. You're like the Mother Earth. So this is something that is just as honorable as the warrior men. So the warrior men were probably considered more important until the White Buffalo Woman showed up. And then she was like, hey, we're leveling the playing field because this thing that you have is necessary for the buffalo men to be able to do anything as well. And then she goes to the children, and she's like, children, you are the most precious thing that they have here. Your parents do love you and take care of you. Like, the things that they do are because they love you. Because they can remember being children. But you have to grow up and you have to learn that you're the next generation. So you have to learn how to be an adult like your parents are now when the time comes. And I think that's very good. It's to bring back, especially because in basically every culture, even today, most cultures really think of children as being the lowest in value. And she's like, no, you are of most value, and everyone else is of lesser value, but everyone wishes to teach you well so that you can become the keepers of the flame of, the next generation, and then you can bring in the next generation and keep this tribe going. And I also like that the pipe is used to represent the one thing that binds men and women together. So the men will make the pipe, and then the women will dress a pipe up to make it beautiful. So that's not only practical like the men, but also beautiful like the women, right? So it ties both of them together. And then it also lists in here a ceremony done by men and women whenever they want to get married, where they come together and they tie red ribbons and everything. And so that's also really cool. And she also describes the end of the world. She's like, the entire world was once covered with water, as we all know, which again, a worldwide flood. I know people say there's no evidence for a worldwide flood. However, every single culture that has ever existed has a flood story. And we get history by adding together all of the events that cultures wrote down. I'm just saying, I think there was a worldwide flood. Blah, blah, blah. Words are hard, especially whenever you've been reading for a little bit. I also think it's interesting, this is just not so much on this specifically, but the fact that porcupine quills are considered very beautiful. I have never given it much thought. I am interested to look at porcupine quills now and to see if I think that they are pretty myself. But, with the limitations you have of what can and can't be pretty, I can see why. And that's just in a lot of stories that the porcupine quills are mentioned. Yeah, and she basically ends up going and is like, look, the reason that we do all these things is that all of us are all combined together in some way, shape, or form, including nature. And it talks about the bald eagle being the wisest of the birds, which I think is fun. Yeah, go America. Get the bald eagle noises going on. Yeah, and she says the 4 ages of creation are in me. Oh yeah, and the end of the world, it's like apparently this buffalo spirit of some sort that loses hair and legs every year or every generation of some sort. And whenever all the hair and all the legs are gone finally, then the earth will end again, which is an interesting concept for the end of the world, which totally makes sense if you've experienced something. And something very interesting about these stories, so say something like the Bible, right? It's not ever referencing the past, really. It's like always referencing itself though it's current, as if it's a thing that was actively happening at the time that you're reading it. So it feels more like a historical textbook or diary, whereas these Indian stories are all speaking of things that's like ancient. Everything is not, this is what's happening right now. Everything's like, this is how we got to where we are now. We got here because of this story from the past that's just been generation upon generation upon generation passed down over and over and over again. So that's very interesting to say. And then always I find it interesting that considering the buffalo were considered sacred, it was kind of like they're considered sacred because of the place that they held in society, which was to be something that you could eat and consume, and that had a lot of benefits for like clothes and things. So their sacredness actually came from how useful they were in society, which is a very interesting concept as well compared to, say, a lot of like Indian religions where, cows are sacred, or maybe some other animals too. It's like you don't touch the sacred animal because it's too special, even though, like a cow has so many benefits if you would treat it as though it were a cow and cultivate its life and then use all of the resources that it has to, give you sustenance and to help you live a better life. So they have that understanding that it's kind of like the divine, the sacred, is tied up in something's usefulness, in what it was designed for, and using it in the way it was intended by the grandfather mystery, So I think that's really interesting and very cool. This is one of those stories that at some point in the future I would like to come back to, because I think there's a lot more here, but it's kind of, this is one of the ones that I feel like feels a little bit like a poem, where it's like, I know there's more here, but I know I'd have to come back to it to discover the more that's here inside the story. But that's what I got out of the story. What did you get out of the story? Let me know down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you like this, go ahead and check out one of these other videos right here. Thank you very much. Something